I'm going to tell you the story of my Antler series when I started using shed antlers, shed deer antlers. So I was looking at the curve here of the antler and I got pretty thrilled by it and decided I could put a rock in, and so I attached the rock and then took coils of pine needles and rolled around the antler tines, and it was all pretty great. But then from that I was like, well, this is a basket form, but look at this basket form. And I stuck some antlers into a basket, and this particular one has a lovely jasper in the base, and it's really heavy because there's a lot of weight to this basket. And I put them in the sides, and gravity was working for me, so it wasn't that difficult to like just put them in the sides and weave around them. And I put the fossicles on the outside of the pine needle coils to give it a little bit of texture and to look pretty rough, and that was this basket. After I worked with those antlers that were sticking up, I thought, well, maybe I should go back to a more traditional basketry form. And so, it comes up and it has a handle. And I started looking at these arches and how they would work and how to attach them. And I figured out how to attach them on the outside and on the inside and through the coils. And with this one, there's an attachment on one of the tines. It's stuck to the side. It's stitched in. There's a lot of interesting things. I love the rock on this. It's a petrified wood slice from Saddleback Mountain by Ellensburg, and it's particularly nice because you can see the tree rings that were there until 10 million years ago, or however many it was. And so this is an antler, and as I was looking at the handle one day, I was like, well, if Red Riding Hood had one like this, it would have been a different story with her and the wolf. So I'm going to name these all Red Riding Hood 2.0, 2.1, and on. Then I went back to the idea of multiple antlers and put them into shapes and wired the shapes together and started looking at them, and I thought, whoa, what would this do? What would this do? And eventually moved to a basket that had a tree in the middle. And this particular basket has a lovely rock in the base, and it has detail getting us there, and then a really lot of winding, and realized this is wired in there. And I looked at it as a tree for a while, and then somebody said, why don't you consider it as on its side, because it has more motion? And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. And then my photographer said, oh, I used to collect jellyfish up in the San Juans as a kid, and that's what it looked like. They looked like aquaria, which is the name, and I thought that was a particularly lovely name, and so I named this Ponderosa aquaria, because these are ponderosa pine needles, and this is the aquaria set. But it works as a tree as well. Continuing along with the idea of multiple antlers, I decided to try them as legs. Somebody said that to me at one point, and I was like, okay. And I wired them together and put them together, and then looked at them for 6 months before I went on to see what was going to come off the top. And this piece ended up being called Arachne Dancing because it looks like a spider to me somehow. And there are 8, so I was counting. And you can see she's kicking up her leg there. So okay, we've got this. These are another ponderosas. They're coming around. Inside you can see the heads of the buttons of the antlers, and it has a lot of motion. Moving on with the antlers, one of my friends was going to make a teapot out of metal pieces, and I thought, oh well, I'll just try one out of pine needles. So I created this teapot, and as it rolled, I put in an antler for the handle. And it was such a headache to get it to work because of this is working against gravity. I think I had to build it 4 times to get it to the place where it would pour. And then because it could pour, of course, I had to have a teacup for it to pour into. And then on top of that, it looked to me like it could have been from, medieval times, because it's so, it looks like it could have been carved or something. And that reminded me of Beowulf, the medieval hero who was sort of crazy, who decided that he was going to capture Grendel, who was this monster, was killing everybody in the village. And if Beowulf had sat down to wait for Grendel, he would have had a teapot that looked like this, and that's why I called it Waiting for Grendel.